Hey there guys, welcome back to another deck profile with yours truly, Paul Reisman. Today we're taking a look at the deck I piloted in this week's feature match. Nick and Tina are coming at you with fairies and flowers. Without further ado, let's jump right into things.
This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for products, and FowlLibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists, as well as our guest lecturer members King Pearlshine, Vite Ramen, Mognite, and Darren Noblock. Class is in.
Alright guys, we are making a Nicklause deck. Now Nicklause has been a really interesting ruler for me. The blue rulers are always interesting to me, but especially Nicklause. He's got this really cool theme of using flowers that turn into resonators that do interesting things. So Nicklause is here to turn his flowers into weapons of mass destruction, and he's doing so alongside Tina. Tina is here to provide some fairy backup support. And so let's just jump right into the deck here. We have 4 of the Star Scepter, which draws you a card and allows you to put in a 1-drop or less flower addition from your hand into the field. So you can double up effects pretty quickly because of that, because they all have enter effects save for 1. And then the seal effect is really interesting too. It counts the flowers on the field and graveyard and reduces the cost for judgment as part of that. So when you do finally judgment into Nicklause, the enchanting Etoile, what you do have is a flying barrier 10/10 that turns your flowers into 10/10 flyers. They have quick cast in your hand, and then anytime you play an enchanting skill spell, you rest up to 1 target non-magic stone entity. That's your field and your opponent's field, which I think is interesting. There are some times I think that the game would incentivize you to rest your own stuff potentially for reasons, but it's an option. I don't know why you would need to do that, but it's open-ended, so you can use it on both sides of the field. I'm also running 2 of Dominatus. Dominatus is here to give me access to Tina if I need her, but for the most part, Dominatus is often shipped away. If I do need a different regalia to search for with my Yggdrasil, which I am playing at 2 of, as I do in most of these decks, it is a really good way of just making use of those later game Yggdrasils to draw additional cards, to make additional bodies, to just get value in general. So Dominatus is good for that. Again, it has the same seal requirement, but for fairies instead, so it's counting fairies on your field, fairy entities you control on your field, and then it draws you a card and makes a 4/4 flyer when it enters, which is really nice. Of all the Virtuous skills I'm playing for Tina, Virtuous Crusade is the #1 that I picked, and the reason is because it's a draw spell, but it also allows you to put 2 dudes on the field. This is really good for Nicklause because he doesn't really have any good resonators. When I was looking at like the dragon and the other fairies that you could use to support this deck, they were okay. Like they had some utility, but I wanted a more consistent deck that could play on my opponent's turn as a more mid-range kind of control-y deck, and so Virtuous Crusade just really fit the bill in that regard. And then if I have extras in my hand and I just don't really need more guys, I can just draw 2 cards if I'm looking for something specific. So this card is really good for that reason. That being said, I'm also only playing 3 of the Enchanting Sortie for Nicklause himself. Most of the time I think people would want to play 4 of this, but I'm not playing as many flowers as I would like. In fact, in a lot of ways I consider this just a draw spell. If I have multiples of these in hand, it doesn't feel good to have. I often just like to keep 1 of the opening just to be able to do things like look into my deck deeper and further. The target activate ability cancel is useful against decks like Zebin or even against Moonchild rulers, which, you know, were not really present in the games that I played with this, so that it really didn't come up that much. But it is really good for dumping things into the graveyard, fueling your judgment, and doing other things to just be able to look for the cards you need in order to continue on playing the game. One of the better cards in the deck, in my opinion, is Enchanting Words. If this didn't say 1 cost or less on the top of the owner's deck, I might be playing 4 of it. But there's not, in my opinion, there were not a lot of 1-drops that I was super concerned. Drawing into this, top decking this against something like like a Prisia or anything would not be very fun, so I limited myself to running 3 of this, but this card is absolutely amazing. This thing can spin back Regalia, other 1-drops, it can get rid of tokens, it can do a whole bunch of stuff, and then it searches you out a flower, which I'm playing multiple of, and I'll show you those in just a second here. But I am playing Super Bloom as a win con in the late game. Just pay 2 and you bring back all of your flowers on your opponent's turn, and then they can swing in the air for 10 each for what you need. In my estimation, Nick only really needs like 2 or 3 flowers to be representing a really lethal board. And so I'm playing, in this version, I'm playing 3 white fairy flower. This card is super solid, actually, for Nicklause Tina, in that it's a 1-drop flower that you can search out with either your enchanting words or just put into the field with your scepter. It makes you a 4/4 light fairy token, but then it buffs everything on your field for +1/+1 for each different flower with a different name you have. So you start getting multiples of these on the field with your other flowers. You're starting to give your field +2, +4, right? This card is actually really solid for the field buff it gives, and I think that's probably the most underrated effect on the card. I'm playing 2 of the Temporal Hydrangea. This is good for just bouncing things away. There are ways in which this deck can deal with aggro. This is one of them, but it's not as effective nearly as the Anemone. This is just going to be resting a whole bunch of stuff a lot of the time, and it even steals 1-drops too. So it's really fun to just take that rested resonator that my opponent controls and just steal it for, I mean, just so many fun and good things, right? It's just an amazing card in general. I'm also playing 3 Clairvoyant Iris. So this card is good because it draws you a card in combination with the Star Scepter. You're putting this card in, you're drawing a card, you're playing your Clairvoyant Iris from your hand, drawing an additional card. So now, not only are you making your Judgment cheaper, you've drawn 2 cards off of a 1-drop, essentially turning it into a Virtuous Crusade, right? I think that's really strong, and the fact that you can banish it to look for 2 more cards is also really good. Sets up a little bit for your sortie, which is also really helpful. And then the last 10 cards here are all support cards in the colors that I'm using. So I tried really hard to stick to just 2 colors to make these decks a little bit easier to run in and, you know, kind of imagine all together. I'm playing 3 Flashing Smile. As you notice, this deck needs its board wipe. Draw a card, 300 damage to the board, your opponent's board for every card in your hand. Just very helpful. Very, very helpful card. And you can do it on your opponent's turn because it's quick cast. Really helpful. Intimidation, this is just to prevent battle damage from resonators, which can be helpful, especially if you're playing against aggro. I play 2 Muse Staring At. This card is solid in that, you know, it can help against the Branhart matchup. And then I'm playing 2 Girl Staring At. This card is also really helpful for just removing swiftness from creatures and other things that your opponent's playing in non-burn aggro decks. So like just regular aggro decks. But there are alternatives in the sideboard that I want to talk about in case you find yourself in a different kind of aggression matchup. Stones are pretty straightforward. 4 Light Vapors, 2 Adiractus Moria, 4 the 4 Sea Stone. That's pretty clear. In the sideboard, I have additional Girl and Muse Staring At. I do like having Dance of Spirits to just say no to my opponent playing any cards, and it's in color, so that's really helpful. Play 3 Parry in case my opponent is playing Branhart. This card's funny. It's just funny. It's just a funny card to just shut things down. And then I'm playing a Campanella package with 2 Campanella, a First Moon to protect my flowers, and then a Fountain of the Oblivion Moon to make use of my other ruler in the event that I just need to see more cards and turn off other activate abilities. Last but not least is falling into the cracks of time for the mirror match, because it's really funny to see your opponent play something like Virtuous Crusade, choosing the mode to make tokens, and then you just make them waste their card. It's very fun. Anyway, guys, this is my Nick Tina list. Let me know what you guys think. I definitely don't think this is like the most optimal version of the deck. I think there's still other things you can do, especially if you're looking to take this into a more competitive direction, but it was still fun. It had a lot going for it, and I think if you're someone who called to this color combination, you'll enjoy it as well. But what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comment section down below. This has been Paul, and until next time, guys, class dismissed.